So has the crash arrived yet? I'm Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group. This is the May 2022 residential real estate market update for the Las Vegas Valley, where we look at single-family resale residential. A lot of what I'm reading today says the crash arrived. In fact, it arrived multiple months ago. I'm not seeing it. And as I present the data to you, the actual real data that's coming out of the multiple listing service here in the Las Vegas Valley, I don't think you're going to see a crash either. So let's go ahead and dive into the numbers. The first number I want to talk about is price. As I do every month, I go over pricing and then I start looking at sales, and then I look at some of the more forward pointing indicators in the market. I try to give you specifically factual information. I try to leave out most of the opinion fluff. As I get into some of the forward indicators for those things that look to the future, I will give you some of my opinion about exactly what that means and relate it to the larger context of the environment that we exist in. And then I'll give you some conclusion as we get toward the end of the video. But I want to try to give you the unpolished data so that you actually understand what's going on and you can make up your own mind instead of just parroting or worrying about what other people are telling you should be the way you're thinking about things. In this video, we always look at the data from the prior month. So we're looking at the data from April of 2022, and we make comparisons to the month prior to that, so month on month. So from March of 2022 to April of 2022, and from the year prior. So we look at April of 2021 relative to April of 2022. And so at the end of April 2022, the median sales price, single family residential resale in the Las Vegas Valley, $475,000. That's up. It's up $15,000 from the $460,000 at the end of March. That's up 3.3% in 1 month. That's a pretty substantial increase in 1 month. And that's the fourth record of the year, right? We're looking at April, so it's the fourth month of the year. We've hit 4 records so far this year. So we're just going up. So pricing's certainly not coming down. In fact, year over year, looking back to April of 2021, when the median sale price was $371,000, we are up $104,000 or 28.0% year over year. Now, I pointed out last month in the market update video, median income in Las Vegas Valley for an individual, $46,000. But if you owned a home at the median, your home went up in value by $104,000, more than twice what your median income was for the year. All right. Now, that's impressive information. It actually is impressive information. In fact, there are some people out there who are suggesting this is problematic information because it's 4 times where we were at the bottom of the market in 2008, 2009. And that's a mildly interesting statistic. It's misleading in 2 specific ways. One is it's not adjusted for inflation. So yes, the sales price when we were at the absolute bottom of the last cycle, which in fact was priced down almost 2/3 from where we had gotten to previously when we were at the top of that previous cycle, and was dramatically impacted by a number of things, including a financial crisis across the entire country. So if we take that very problematic number and we look at it, we still have to inflate it to present dollars to be able to make an actual valid comparison. So first problem is the $117,000 is not inflated. If we inflate that number to current dollars, 2022 dollars, that number is actually $156,250. And so we're up just over 3 times, not 4 times. So that's a really substantial increase. But the other reason that number is problematic, statistically meaningless, is because unless you happen to get in at the very bottom price and sell at the very top, and we're not at the very top, but sell at the very top, it's a return number that doesn't mean anything. And to try to draw a trend line off the bottom of a data set is highly misleading. We'd have to go back and find what the actual trend was in the period of time during the 1990s. Because once we got to 2000, we were going up substantially. 2001, we ended up having airspace locked down after 9/11 for a whole week. Las Vegas was significantly negatively impacted. So we may have had 2002 and 2003 as normal years at the beginning of the century. But 2004, 5, and 6, highly inflated. 4 and 5 in Las Vegas. 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 were going down very completely unusual, right? Actually never happened in the history of the housing market anywhere across the country before to see that kind of devastation. So to try to talk about a trend line off a meaningless data point, an interesting but meaningless data point, is deceptive and irrelevant. So I'd have to go back and figure out what the actual proper trend line was, but we should be experiencing something on the order of 4 to 7% annual appreciation at trend, at long-term trend. And so in many parts of the country, that's about 5%. Las Vegas has been a growing economy, rapidly growing economy since it was founded in 1905 with about 500 people. So 117 years ago. We've grown from 500 people to 2.4 million people. So we've been a more rapidly growing environment always than the rest of the country. And so our housing prices have always escalated on a trend line that looks more like 7%. We're below that trend, by the way, still today. I'd have to go back and actually do the regression calculation to find the appropriate data points for you, and I may do that in an Ask the Professor video. But we're actually below trend. All right, so price, $475,000. Impressive. And if you're a homeowner, you've been making some significant money, equity in your property. Let's look at that on a per foot basis, because we want to understand something about the internals of the housing market here, and whether or not that price appreciation is only happening at the high end or only happening at the low end, or if it's pretty steady throughout the entire market. So per foot pricing at the end of April of 2022, $258. That's up from $250 at the end of March. It's up 3.2%, where median home price was up 3.3%. So pretty much in line month over month. Now, slightly higher on a year over year basis, because at this time last year, the part of the market that was moving most rapidly was the sort of the lower half of the market. That changed later on last year. And so we ended up in this more balanced point that we've got right now, looking sort of month over month, where the whole market seems to be going up at about that 3.2, 3.3% over this past month. But in April of 2021, we were at $199 per foot, up $59, or 29.6% relative to up 28.0% for median sales price. So over the course of the year, the market skewed a little bit toward the higher end, meaning a little bit more on the sales market has been at those higher end properties, pulled up that middle point a little bit more quickly on a price per foot basis. But it's pretty negligible. We're 1.5 points or 1.5% different on the price per foot than we were on the median. So that's pretty consistent. That means the whole market is actually moving up really strongly. All right. But that's pricing, right? And as I've said numerous times, pricing's irrelevant if I don't care if something sells. And if there's only 3 houses that sell, the price could be whatever, right? Because there's only 3 houses. Well, there were more than 3 houses that sold. In April of 2022, there were 2,885 single-family resale residential properties that sold, that closed escrow, sold, ownership changed hands, in April of 2022. That's down. It's down from where we were in March, which was a really strong month. It's down 8.0% from 3,136. Now, I'll point out that in 2020, we locked down the economy. In 2021, we rebounded and had more sales volume than we've ever had in the history of the Las Vegas Valley. So both 2020 and 2021 create challenging comparisons, right? Because they're somewhat misleading. It's kind of like talking about trend off the very bottom of the market or trend off the very top of the market. They're not relevant. They may be interesting, but they're not relevant data points. So we kind of have to look back to 2019, 2018, if we want to make valid comparisons to how the market should be going at this particular time of year. Now, on price, right, we're just at record levels. So whatever, we're way higher. But on these data points, which are numbers of properties, the comparisons start to become challenging, and we have to start looking across a larger number of years to find sort of what's true. 2,885 units sold, down 8% from 3,136 units sold in the prior month. And that's down 15.6% from 3,418 units sold in April of 2021. The challenge is that April last year that we're down 15.6% from, that's the second highest April in the data set, going all the way back to 2012. If we look at a more normal year, 2019, considered at the time to be a strong year in the Las Vegas housing market, not impacted by pandemic, not impacted by massive pent-up demand from the pandemic shutdowns. There were only 3 months higher in 2019, higher volume, than we had in April of 2022. So while we're down from last year and we're down from last month, we're actually at a really strong number at 2,885. And by the way, once in a while when I'm talking to people, I haven't had the comment specifically on the videos, but once in a while when I'm talking to people, they suggest, well, aren't you being optimistic because you're a real estate agent and you want the market to be going higher? Not necessarily. First of all, if you actually know me, I'm a pretty balanced person in terms of optimism, pessimism. I'm not really an overly optimistic person. Secondly, saying to you that the sales are getting stronger and always going stronger isn't necessarily the kind of thing that is helpful to the real estate business. It's actually just accurate data. The real estate business is dependent on transaction volume. And so if I could convince sellers the market's going to go down, get out now, that would increase transaction volume. If I could convince buyers, on the other hand, market's going up, get in now, that might increase market volume. But because we're in a highly inventory constrained market, we can't increase volume just by pulling in more buyers. We need to pull in more sellers. And so it actually would make more sense if it was just me trying to suggest great things about how the market is evolving to increase transaction volume. I'd be suggesting the opposite, that things are starting to roll over, get bad, and you should get out now. I just don't happen to believe that. And so that's not exactly what I want to present. So volume, strong, actually. Record levels? No, definitely not. but strong. What about looking forward in time, right? So sales, what happened in April? Important to know. It's backward looking, same thing with pricing. But we can start looking at that data from April to learn things about what's going to happen into the future. And so one of the things we look at is pending home sales, because pending home sales are contracts that have been written. Buyer goes into the market, looks at some property, finds a property they want, they write a contract. Pending home sale. But that pending home sale will become, hopefully, a closed home sale in the following month. So it tells us something about what we might expect for May. So we had closed home sales in April, 2,885, but pending home sales in April, 2,942. So we're up a little bit from what we had closed in April with regard to pendings. So May looks like it could be a little bit stronger. Now I will say that's down from 3,148, down 6.5% from what we had pending in March of 2022. But this was still the third highest April pending home sales going back to 2012. So it's a pretty strong April in terms of pending sales. This was down actually from 3,277 pending home sales in April of last year, which was the second highest month of pending home sales, down 10.2%. So again, we're not at blowout volume levels like we were last year, but we're at very strong volume levels, including looking forward into May. And we're looking at that at record pricing. All right. So in order to have a sale, we need to have inventory in the market. And this is where I say inventory is constrained. So let's look at what inventory is, because that tells us something about what can sell into the future. If it's not in inventory, it's really hard to sell it. So for sale units in April of 2022, 3,046. Now that's up from where we were at the end of March of 2022. And there have been a lot of people talking about how, all this inventory is flooding into the market. We're up 5.0%. We're up from 2,900 at the end of March of 2022. This is actually the first inventory number increase in the whole of 2022, right? So we're 4 months in. It's the first time we've seen any kind of increase in number of homes for sale this year. We're up 5%. Of course, where do we expect on the calendar new inventory to come into the market at higher rates? March, April, May, June, July, right? So we expect to see some inventory build at this time of year. And that we're up 5% from March of this year through the end of April of this year. It's not actually a really big increase in inventory. What about year over year? Because last year, we know we were really inventory constrained, and that led to a whole year of record price increases. Only 1 month last year in 2021 did not have a record high price. Inventory, standing inventory for sale, single family residential resale in the Las Vegas Valley, down 17.4% from the 3,689 that we saw last year. Now, I've been reading a few articles recently that have suggested standing inventory is considerably higher than it was last year. I don't know what those people are reading, but that is absolutely not what the data show. The data are clear. We are down at the end of April, 17.4% for standing inventory from where we were at this time last year. And we have just come off, and we are up by 146 units on inventory from the end of March of 2022, which was a record low inventory. So we don't have a lot of standing inventory out there. It's just not there. But of course, we have for sale and we have pending, which is going to sell. It's leaving the market. So we have to get in new inventory, new listings. So new listings, where do we come in on that? New listings in April of 2022, 3,634. That's down. It's down from 3,640, or 6 new listed houses, down 0.1% from March of 2022. Now, interestingly, right, I talk about we expect new houses, new listings to come into the market at this time of year. That 3,634 is actually the lowest April since 2013, and it's the second lowest April since 2008. So new listings are not flooding into this market. They're coming in at a low rate. We're coming in below what we would expect for normal seasonal patterns right now. So inventory is low. It's down 17.4% from where it was last year. And new listings are low. Last year, actually, April of 2021, new listings were 3,856. We're down 5.8% from the weak number that we were at last year. So inventory is low, new into market is low. Yes, that does mean that pending home sales and sales are lower because we're highly inventory constrained. Again, if I was trying to juice the market somehow, I'd want more listings, I'd want more stuff coming into the market. And so I wouldn't talk about necessarily how you're making all of this money right now by holding on to your property. Now, there's one other data point I've been talking about for the past year and a half. Last month, I looked at it in a different manner because it may be a little bit more easy to understand the impact of it, and that is back on market. In April of 2022, there were 1,000 single-family residential resales that had gone into contract, that had become a pending contract, that failed, that came back into the market. Now, those failed sales represent 35% of the sales that actually concluded. So that's a really big number. A third of sales are failing. And kind of interestingly, the back on market, it's not literally a third of products, 35% of houses that are falling out of contract. We've seen some fall out of contract 3 and 4 times. So it goes into contract, back on market, goes into contract, back on market, goes into contract, back on market. That represents a really significant problem. Every time a seller has a house that they've listed for sale go into contract, they start making all their plans. Where they're going to move to, how are they going to buy what they're moving to, where are they going to go on vacation, whatever else. Every time a buyer gets into contract, they've made a significant psychological investment and started to make dollar investments for appraisal, for inspection, figuring out their moving logistics, etc. For those contracts to fail is a failure in the market. It's not a failure of the market, but it's a failure in the market. And I've talked about different reasons why contracts fail. Inspections, appraisals. There are times that contracts fail for reasons that are a little bit less predictable and harder to do anything about prospectively, such as buyer losing a job. But there are reasons why contracts fail, and those are understandable reasons, and therefore contracts can be protected. You can build in mechanisms to prevent them from failing most of the time. 35% of contracts are failing. Really problematic. Really problematic. And I suggest that if you're working with a real estate agent, you should ask them what they're doing to protect the contract that you may get into. And you should probably ask them earlier in the process, have they had contracts that have failed? And what's been the reasons they've failed? And what have they learned to do about it to prevent failures from occurring again? Because you don't want to be in a failed contract. It's not helpful to you. It's not helpful to your counterparty. Now, I do want to make one more observation here, and that is with regard to affordability. And I just want to talk about this real quickly. I'm going to try to do an Ask the Professor video where I tie inflation and interest rates and affordability together, but I do want to make this particular comment here in this video. At the end of April, median sale price was $475,000. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, MBA, the median, or not median, but the national average interest rate on a 30-year fixed rate loan was 5.36%. Now, according to Freddie Mac, the national average for 30-year fixed rate loans, the interest rate was 5.27%, but they only look at conforming loans. So let's use the MBA number, 5.36%. Assuming that you put down 10%, so you did a 90% loan to value mortgage, you put 10% in, so that would be $47,500 into your purchase, and you borrowed the residual, and you borrowed that on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That mortgage is going to cost you $2,374 per month. Now, you can find banks that are going to charge you a lower interest rate. You can certainly find banks that will charge you a higher interest rate. This is significantly elevated from where interest rates were last year at this time. But I point this out to you as this is not actually a massive affordability problem. And in fact, if we make a comparison to where we were at the top of the market in 2006 at $314,700 for the median purchase price, if we inflate that to current dollars, $448,000, and we impose the 6.75% interest that had been the average according to the Mortgage Bankers Association at that time, that median house in 2006 actually cost you $221 more per month to carry. So we do not have an affordability crisis, and we can talk more about the details of that, and I will address it in a different video. But even as interest rates have gone up, what we're finding is housing prices still at the median remain affordable to those who have median incomes in the Las Vegas Valley. All right. So if you're a buyer, though, know that it is true there is very little inventory. And while inventory came up at the end of April from where it had been in March, and in fact, where it had been ever, for sale inventory is up 5%, first increase in inventory from the record low numbers that we've been having so far this year. Inventory remains very tightly constrained. And so your options are fewer, and the ways in which to get into contract are you've got to be more assertive, both in terms of timing and in terms of the way in which you approach the seller. You need a real estate agent who's knowledgeable about this market, who can help you get into contract, and then can protect those contracts to make sure that you get all the way through and complete your purchase. If you're a seller, this market is very concerned. Participants in this market, buyers in this market, are very concerned about potentially overpaying. And so they're turned off by properties that are priced high, that are priced inappropriately for the market. And we've seen actually multiple properties drop out of the market over this past month. Properties have come into the market priced way high, and they sit on the market for 2 weeks, and maybe they have a small price adjustment, and they sit there for another 2 weeks, and then they just drop out of the market. They are withdrawn, right? In some manner, they're fake inventory. They're not really there. It's a seller who's effectively said, hey, if you can get me this ridiculous number for my house, sure, I'll sell it. There's no buyers paying ridiculous numbers for houses right now. Housing prices are going up, and buyers are having to pay more for houses. But buyers are being careful that they're paying appropriately for a house. And it may be something different than what an appraiser says is appropriate, but according to actual market dynamics between sellers and buyers. If you're a seller and you're priced low, you're making a big mistake. It is not helping anybody because you're sending bad signals into the market, signals that are your house is not really that valuable, and it's causing all sorts of strange interactions in the marketplace. So you really want to have a real estate agent who understands what the actual value of your home is, who can talk to you about this is what the price should be and this is why the price should be this. And work with somebody who can have that conversation with you, whom you can develop a trusting relationship with, that you're actually going to listen to them and respect the opinion that they're giving you so that you can put your property into the market at the right price and actually get it sold. And then somebody who also is able to protect you from contracts falling apart. At the Chong Miller Group, we represent buyers, we represent sellers. We're very good at getting properties into contract. We're very good at protecting those contracts so they don't fall through. So if you're thinking about buying, if you're thinking about selling, please reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you. See if we are the people who you actually would feel comfortable having guide you through the process and assist you through the process. I'm Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group. I look forward to talking with you. Thank you.